First appearing in Captain America Comics #1 from 1941, the Super Soldier Serum brought Steve Rogers to the peak of physical perfection, able to lift twice his own body weight. He was an expert military strategist and an Olympic-level martial artist and gymnast, and he was resistant to disease and fatigue. In the late 1930s, with the threat of World War looming in Europe, the American High Command embarked upon a program to create the perfect soldier. Project Rebirth, spearheaded by Dr. Abraham Erskine, was intended to create a battalion of supreme fighting men, stronger and more resilient than normal soldiers, expertly trained and equipped, a bulwark against Nazi aggression. The first test subject for Erskine's revolutionary super soldier serum was a young would-be artist named Steve Rogers, who had attempted to enlist but had been turned away, classified 4F, because of his physical frailty. Subjected to Erskine's process, Rogers' body virtually doubled in size, as millions of healthy cells were created almost instantaneously. His physique was accelerated to the pinnacle of human perfection, all weakness and deficiency drained out of him. However, the secret test area had been infiltrated by Nazi sympathizers, who slew Dr. Erskine, the only person who knew how the process worked. Although Rogers quickly captured the saboteurs, it was clear that there would be no battalion of super soldiers now. Steve Rogers would be the only one. Equipped with a virtually unbreakable red, white, and blue shield, the product of a metallurgical accident, and trained in combat, tactics, and espionage in the fighting arts, Rogers was rechristened Captain America. Clad in a striking Star-Spangled Banner uniform, he became a symbol for the U.S. fighting forces and a dread nemesis of the Axis powers. In his many battles against the Nazi aggression, Captain America was joined by a sidekick, the worldly James Bucky Barnes, who had discovered the secret of Rogers' true identity. Together, Cap and Bucky tore a swath through the ranks of enemy forces, vanquishing such Nazi menaces as the Red Skull, Agent Axis, and the Iron Cross. The duo were often joined by their allies in the Invaders team, including the original Human Torch and Namor the Submariner. In 1945, Cap and Bucky were on a mission to apprehend the German scientist Baron Zemo, who planned to steal an experimental long-range drone plane developed by the British. As the plane took off, Cap and Bucky made a desperate leap to catch it. Cap couldn't maintain his hold and plummeted earthward. Seconds later, the plane self-destructed, seemingly killing Bucky Barnes. Cap's body plunged into the icy waters below, where he was frozen in a state of suspended animation, a condition he would remain in for decades to come. To safeguard morale, the Allied High Command kept the deaths of Cap and Bucky secret and recruited other heroes to play the role of Captain America. Meanwhile, the true Captain America slumbered within the ice. Eventually, while searching for their foe Namor, the Avengers came across Captain America's body floating in the icy waters and revived him. Now Captain America was a man out of time, a soldier whose war was long over. Attempting to find a place for himself in this strange new society, Cap accepted an offer of Avengers membership, and swiftly became the binding glue that held the team together. Cap also offered his services to his old war buddy Nick Fury, now head of S.H.I.E.L.D. It was while operating as a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent that Cap first encountered Sharon Carter, S.H.I.E.L.D. Agent 13, who would become his paramour. Hailed as the most trusted costumed champion of them all, Captain America fought on, struggling to uphold freedom and democracy, both alone and with the Avengers, right up until the moment of his death. After the announcement of the Superhuman Registration Act, Captain America could not stomach enforcing what he considered to be an unjust law. He broke with his old friend Tony Stark and formed a resistance movement to help unwilling heroes to defy the law. The split fractured the superhero community and set the heroes against each other in what would become known as the Civil War. At the end of the war, Iron Man defeated and captured Rogers, who was soon after assassinated as he was brought into a federal courthouse in New York City. Without Rogers to lead it, the organized resistance against the Superhuman Registration Act fell apart. Many of the heroes who had held out stepped forward to register. The Falcon, for instance, signed up solely so he could appear at Rogers' funeral. Having seen many people supposedly die in the past, including Rogers himself, some heroes refused at first to believe that he was dead. It was only after Iron Man and Wolverine, each representing a different side in the Civil War, were able to corroborate Rogers' death that the reality began to sink in. Although Stark had gone on record stating that no one would replace Captain America, it wasn't long before he was looking for a replacement. With Captain America's costume and indestructible shield in S.H.I.E.L.D. custody, he could give assignment to whoever he liked. When Stark discovered that Clint Barton had somehow survived the Scarlet Witch's disassembling of the Avengers, he brought Barton aboard the SHIELD helicarrier to show him the original SHIELD, revealing that he'd had 2 imperfect copies made. The first copy sat on a display at the Smithsonian, while the second was to be buried with Rogers. The real SHIELD was up for grabs. Barton tried out the SHIELD, becoming the first person to wield it properly after 77 other people had failed. Stark gave Barton the SHIELD and the costume to try out as he went to arrest Patriot and the new Hawkeye for failure to comply with the Superhuman Registration Act. At the moment of truth, Barton, dressed in Rogers' uniform and holding his shield, let the 2 heroes go rather than arrest them. He then gave the SHIELD back to Stark. Unwilling to let Rogers' shield languish in the custody of SHIELD, which he blamed in part for Rogers' death, Bucky Barnes stole it. Having returned from his own purported death, after which he had become the Winter Soldier, he used the SHIELD in a few missions of his own. While taking the SHIELD, he ran into Natasha Romanova, with whom he'd had a relationship with when they'd been in the employ of the Soviet Union. After SHIELD finally captured Barnes, Stark surprised him by offering him the identity of Captain America to go along with the SHIELD. Barnes accepted on 2 conditions. First, any secret mental conditioning from his days as the Winter Soldier had to be telepathically removed. Second, he would answer only to himself. Knowing that this would be exactly what Rogers would have wanted, Stark accepted the deal. Not feeling worthy to wear Rogers' own costume, Barnes had a new one designed for himself. Unlike Rogers, Barnes was happy to use weaponry of all sorts in his battles, not just the SHIELD. He carried a pistol and a combat knife on his belt, which featured a number of pouches, and he brought in other ordnance as necessary. As Captain America, Barnes foiled the Red Skull's attempt to assassinate both candidates for the US presidency. He also faced off against the Captain America of the 1950s, William Burnside, who had been placed in suspended animation and brainwashed by the Red Skull and Dr. Faustus. Defeating this hero from the past and restoring his mind established Barnes' claim to be the sole Captain America. Barnes then fought alongside the heroes of Earth against the Skrulls during the Secret Invasion, participating in the final battle in Central Park. This was Barnes' first encounter with many of the heroes who had known Rogers and called him a friend, and he handled himself well. After the Skrulls were driven off, Barnes joined the underground Avengers team that Rogers had once led. He allowed them to use his secret home in an old warehouse as their base of operations, and worked with them under the leadership of Barton, who now called himself Ronin. Barnes also renewed his relationship with the Black Widow, and worked closely with her and the Falcon on many of his missions. Sharon Carter eventually learned she'd been brainwashed by Dr. Faustus to shoot Rogers, and that the gun she'd used was a device designed by Dr. Doom that didn't kill Rogers, but fixed him at the moments of time. The Red Skull captured Carter and planned to use sympathetic nanoparticles in her blood to retrieve Rogers. She escaped and damaged the machinery involved in the Red Skull's scheme. This unstuck Rogers in time and sent him back in time to relive various events in the past. Eventually, the Red Skull managed to bring Rogers back and transferred his own mind from a robot body into Rogers' form. But when the Red Skull tried to kill the new Captain America, Rogers broke his control. After Rogers returned, he saw that Bucky had done an excellent job as Captain America, and he encouraged Bucky to continue. Both men wore the costume through the Siege of Asgard at the end of the Dark Reign. Afterward, Rogers let Bucky have the mantle to himself. The President pardoned Captain America for his actions during the Civil War and repealed the Superhuman Registration Act, which had sparked the conflict. At the President's request, Rogers took over from Norman Osborn as the head of national security, which put him in charge of rebuilding both S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers. Rogers served in that capacity until Baron Zemo revealed Barnes' identity not only as Captain America, but also as the Winter Soldier. Barnes was found innocent in court, but his reputation was ruined, and the President asked Rogers to return to being Captain America. Rogers resisted for a while, but after it seemed that Scotty had killed Bucky during Fear itself, Rogers assumed the role again. In a subsequent battle, the Asgardian god of fear, the Serpent, attacked Rogers and shattered his shield, but Rogers rallied. He later used Thor's hammer Mjolnir to bring Scotty down. Odin had the shield reforged for Rogers. During the Spider Island event, the Spider Queen and the Jackal transformed Rogers into a Spider King, a creature capable of spreading spider powers as a virus across New York City. By means of an antidote made with Anti-Venom's blood, Rogers was cured, after which he helped Spider-Man win the day. After leading the Avengers in a huge conflict with the X-Men over the use of the Phoenix Force, Rogers created an Avengers Unity Squad consisting of both X-Men and Avengers. The new team soon found themselves fighting the Red Skull, who had enhanced his powers by stealing Charles Xavier's brain. Shortly after defeating the Red Skull, both Rogers and Sharon Carter were transported to Dimension Z, a strange realm ruled by Arnim Zola. Rogers escaped from Zola, taking with him a baby that Zola had been growing in a test tube. Rogers spent years in Dimension Z fighting Zola's forces and raising the child, whom he named Ian, as his own. Rogers later managed to escape thanks to the sacrifice of Sharon Carter, who was left trapped there. Back on Earth, Rogers found himself facing an ex-SHIELD agent called the Iron Nail, who managed to neutralize the super soldier serum in Rogers, leaving him old and frail. When Zola's forces attacked from Dimension Z, Rogers knew the world needed a new Captain America, and convinced his old ally Sam Wilson to take on the role. While Rogers still used his tactical skills to help the Avengers, Wilson became an effective Captain America. Wilson also had his own take on Cap's classic costume. He fought the Sons of the Serpent and gained his own sidekick in the form of a new Falcon. Wilson's Captain America joined the Avengers and helped fight Warbringer and other foes. However, his unconventional methods eventually brought him into conflict with Rogers, causing Wilson to eventually step down as Captain America. By then, Rogers himself had been remade, and his youth and strength restored, by Kubrick, a sentient cosmic cube who had been manipulated by the Red Skull into becoming a supporter of Hydra. Kubrick used her immense powers to rewrite Rogers' entire history. The real Rogers was trapped in her mindscape while the new evil version of Rogers, one that was a loyal Hydra agent, was placed into reality. This evil version of Captain America eventually revealed his true colors and took over Hydra, using its forces to conquer America and turn it into a fascistic state under Hydra control. Eventually, the true Rogers escaped from Kubrick's mind and returned to the real world, where he defeated the Hydra version of himself. In the aftermath, America was rebuilt, but Captain America's reputation had been badly damaged. It was a troubling time for Rogers, with enemies such as the Power Elite filling the void left by Hydra. But with the real Steve Rogers once again Captain America, he was more determined than ever to do the right thing. Comment down below what videos you'd like to see in the future, and what you've thought of Captain America in the MCU. Remember to like the video, and subscribe for more Marvel content, and follow me on my various platforms listed in the description. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow.